Because there wasn't self-help. It needed to understand that. Trying to keep my phone. It's my phone.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'm gonna get started. So for those of you who don't know me or haven't met, and for those online, I am Kristen Scoville. I am the new Emergency Management Administrator. So thank you for those that have reached out and introduced themselves. I'll be in touch to make my rounds and visit different locations within the community. We're gonna kick off with Heather, with Mima to give some updates, and then we have Lieutenant McGrath to give our presentation today.
Up here. Good morning, everyone. Just have a couple of really just sort of things to tell you, updates that we could talk about. So I'm sure you all know hurricane season just started June 1st. It is expected to be a very active year. Hopefully that means it's active and everything goes in a complete opposite direction from up here, but I know we are also in the Northeast very overdue for a good hurricane. So whenever I say that, I cringe because it means we'll all be very busy and I don't want to play that game. We are having our quarterly EMD meeting on June 18th at Framingham State University. So we do those every quarter. We just try to encourage all of the EMDs that we deal with from our main East organization up on the North Shore, all the way down to the South Shore. And it's just a great way to get people together. Everybody can network. We do have a virtual option, but I'm just a big fan of being in person. That's just my thing. So we're gonna be having that on June 18th. One of our presenters is gonna be Chief Casford from Randolph, who is gonna talk about his apartment fire, which basically decimated a complete apartment complex, and how we came about coming up with putting together a recovery resource center to help assist those folks. So it's always good when we can get people that have actually had an experience where they've interfaced with us, that they can come and sort of talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, and hopefully it's more good than anything else. We do have a disaster recovery center currently open in 2 different counties, one up in Worcester County for the folks up in Leominster. That was from a storm about, was it the September ones, I think? It seems like September or January. I can't remember when all this stuff happened, where basically the town of Leominster had some significant, serious flooding. Like we're talking about taking out foundations of people's houses, crazy stuff like that. So that's there to help some of those folks with what they call individual assistance. And then there's also another one open in Bristol Community College for folks down in Attleboro and North Attleboro in that area that had similar issues as well. June 26th, there's going to be a large scale WebEOC exercise. I think they're going to be putting out a little bit more information about it, but basically what it's trying to encourage everyone to do is, if you're in your EOC, whether you're one person or you have a couple of people during that exercise, it's going to be something where we're going to give people the opportunity to really practice their skills using WebEOC, and sort of coming in and being able to say, oh, I need to request this resource. And you can sort of follow the process through WebEOC. It also helps our folks up at headquarters who maybe need a little bit practice on their end, how to handle processing those requests and stuff like that. So that's going to be on June 26th. So you should see some more information coming out about that if you do handle WebEOC, and our regional offices as well as the state EOCs will be activated in some sort for that particular exercise. I think you guys are all set with your EMPG money for Needham. That does close out at the end of the month, and EMPG for next year is actually going to be coming out. It's going to be coming out shortly. So just sort of throwing that out there as well. You should be seeing something, I would say, within the next month or so about that coming out. And they're going to do the same thing that they usually do with webinars to make sure that everybody's on the same page, especially, you know, for folks might be newer to the whole EMPG process. There should be some pretty good stuff there too. And then I think the only other thing really just to talk about is we usually do a CERT, the Community Emergency Response Team seminars. We are planning ours for September. Will be more information to come. I know last year we did it with at the bunker and had about 100 CERT members come, and it was just a great way to sort of celebrate them, thank them, but also provide some training and information. So we're working on a location for that. So if anybody asks, that'll be coming soon as well. I think with all of my stuff, I passed out my ERGs to you guys, or at least to your departments. So hopefully you got those. And I think that's all I have, unless anybody has any questions for me. Yes.
Of course it's me.
Yes, Rob.
So I know I've been talking with Bill about using the school as the location.
Mhm.
Is he married to September? Or are you guys, because that it becomes more difficult with the school being open.
I think so. I do think they did have another idea that they were pursuing as well. So I will certainly have a conversation with him.
Okay.
And just see where that's gonna go.
Got it.
But thank you. All right, anybody else have any questions? Great, thank you.
All right, so we're gonna bring up John McGrath, Lieutenant McGrath, to discuss, the magnet fishing ordinance disposals that happened back in March of this year.
Who knew it was a thing?
Who knew?
Hobbies for everyone.
I'll let you take it over.
Alright, did I just push forward?
So you were,
Or is it-
Right down the street from the school.
Yeah.
what should we do?
It is? Awesome.
Yep.
All right.
Take care.
Everybody, for those who don't know me, I'm John McGrath. I'm a lieutenant with the Needham Police. I typically am in charge of patrol operations. I work days and evenings, so fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you want to look at it, I was present at all three of these events. So I was one of the decision makers, so I can answer questions, kind of walk everybody through the decision processes that were happening that night. Originally, what it came in as was a call from Newton to Needham asking for us to just shut down Kendrick Street. They had they said that there was a magnet fisherman who had pulled something from the river and they wanted the bridge shut down. So easy enough, we did that. There was some conversation with Newton, whether it was on the Needham side or the Newton side. So they called Needham Fire down to come and assess it. And unfortunately for Needham, it was just inside of Needham. So. Yeah, no problem. There you go. Rough off the bit, by the way. It's okay.
There we go.
All right. So yeah, about 1800 hours, 6 PM, it was determined that the device was in fact in Needham. So at that time, Matt Dorr, who was the fire deputy, and myself, as the ranking Needham police officer, we had a conversation about what wanted to happen, what we wanted to do. And it was determined that we needed to call the state police bomb squad. So at 1811, we called the bomb squad. How that works is we call directly a phone number through state headquarters. We request, tell them what we need, what the situation is, and they deem the appropriate resources to send out. So this night, they actually ended up sending 2 troopers, a trooper and a sergeant, with their bomb disposal unit. So at about 19-17 hours, the state police arrived. So, they were on another call out. So again, we're kind of just waiting to find out what happened and for their advice on how we should proceed. A lot of times they'll come out for, people have grenades in their homes and they find them, they're cleaning out their uncle's war locker and they find a grenade, they'll come out and it's really not a big deal for them. A lot of times they horrify me. They just pick it up with their bare hand, walk it to the truck and we're out. So we didn't know if it was going to be something like that or if it was going to be a little bit more. So yeah, upon their arrival, they were able to figure out it was a unexploded ordinance and they felt like it had some weight to it and they wanted to detonate it. They didn't want to go too far with it. What they essentially do is they put it in it's a padded, looks like a suitcase. And they just put it in the truck and they drive with it. But as the trooper explained to me, he's like, it's really not the greatest method. There's a little bit of risk to it. So he's like, we want to find some place that's close. I don't have to have this thing bouncing around in my truck, but also they wanted a place that had far from residences, high banks, vegetation, and it was determined quickly that the Nike site was probably the best, or the dog park, if you're unaware. It's formerly Nike site, which is fortunately for us, it used to be the Needham Police shooting range. So in there is high sandbanks, really a great place to drop ordnance and set it off, because that's gonna protect the shrapnel and everything like that. So the state police determined that that would actually be probably a great location for them. So on arrival at the Nike site, the state police advised that they had done this in Bedford and they had not sent out any notification, and that did not go well. Bedford got inundated with 911 calls and just wondering what was going on. So because of the location at the Nike site, we realized that Dover, Wellesley, Needham would be impacted. We actually found out later that Westwood, South Natick was impacted. So I was unaware of it at the time, but just coincidentally, one of the officers working, Anthony Frangillo, he works with our Metro SWAT team, and he's a search manager. He has Ghost, who's our search and rescue dog, and he said, "Hey, Lieutenant, I don't know if you're aware, but MEMA has a targeted messaging system. What that does is it can do certain zip codes, or they can drop a GPS net around the area and notify people in that area something's gonna happen." Is that fairly accurate?
Yeah, like we can actually go in and alert the whole state. We can do it by county. We can just select a town, or we can actually draw a polygon that will encompass, different portions of multiple towns to target that message, but there's always bleed over.
Sure.
So you target it as best as you can, knowing that it's gonna go beyond what you really intend for it to do, but it's all cell tower based, so that's a little bit harder to control.
So that was the big conversation that happened that night, and I called the chief, and we definitely agreed that messaging needed to happen. For the rave system, I think we've talked about it here before, we need Chief Conroy or Chief Schlittler and Kate to agree that this is something we want to push out, so we need their permissions. Likewise, I thought that would be the case in both Dover and Wellesley, and MSP, the state police, were saying they had another call out, and to go through the process to wait was holding them up. So we made the decision, we'll try with MEMA. It's actually initially the search officer said it wasn't something that fit the criteria, but he felt that a conversation with MEMA would potentially they'd go along with this. What happened is we got on a conference call with a team of theirs. It's a dispatch, directors, and they had some poignant questions for us. And then once they agreed, within a couple minutes, they pushed out the message. And that's actually the message that went out to some people's phones. I was actually on site and did not get the message, but I've turned it all off in my phone because I didn't like getting waked up at 2 a.m. I'm over midnights. So what ended up happening is on this first detonation, which unfortunately was the bigger of the two detonations, the MSP had an additional call out. They wanted to detonate. We knew the message was going out, so we gave MSP the go ahead to detonate. They did, and I actually have don't worry, there's actually a video here. So it was interesting from my vantage point there is that actually is pretty accurate of what we heard standing where we were. So when I was told that people from like way out in Needham heard that, I was actually quite surprised. We had an officer at Temple Alia, who called me and said, "Geez, that was insane." And I went, "What are you talking about? It sounded like a muffled." So I was shocked that was the case. But so then the messaging went out, and that was that night's call. So then Wednesday, March 6th, 2024, I think all the media coverage decided we'll bring everybody back to do some more fishing. what was interesting about this one is this was not even called in by the fishermen. A passerby driving by said that they observed somebody pulling an odd object out of the river. Well, yep, they were right. It was a second ordinance. This was actually what bazooka round. So fortunately for us, all the same players were involved. I was there. I don't know if it was Deputy Dorr, but but the same troopers arrived. It was kind of like, all right, here we go again. Same thing. Yep. Okay, let's go. The messaging was pushed out again. This time it was done en route to the facility so that there was plenty of leeway with it going on. What ironically happened with this one is it wasn't as compacted. I guess the first one, the troopers put like 1.5, I forget what it was, 1.5 something of C4 on to explode the ordinance. This they knew was a little less. So they put much less C4 on it, and there wasn't anything really in the device. So you didn't get the same impact. It was loud at the site, but not as the first one. That conversation that night, the state police said that they would like to come out and clear the river. Two chances, it's likely it's gonna be a third. So what they did is they actually called in, their dive team, their marine unit for their boats. The environmental police had divers. They had a team from the United States Navy on standby in, Newport, Rhode Island. Should they find anything, it's actually the property of the Navy. So they were gonna come out, they weren't gonna pull this up from the river. I think some of the troopers on site, they're a little disappointed that we didn't find anything. There was a safe down there, there was an old car, there was some, there was some cleaning up that happened, but there was no ordinance found. So not to say there won't be another adventure, but it was thoroughly swept. It was interesting to me. I thought so what they did is they dropped basically little submersibles, and they used sonar, ground sonar, cameras, and the bank, the bottom down there is actually pretty smooth. I thought it would be all rocks and trees and everything, but it was wide open. They saw more on the camera visually than through the sonar. But and they also sent divers down. Anything that they came across, the safe, things here and there, they would poke and prod and just confirm, move some of the silt out of the way. So they did a very thorough job. They went basically 100 yards in either direction, and to no luck. And that is the presentation in terms of how everything kind of played out. If I'm sure people have questions, I'm happy to answer. Yes.
I'll get that started. Do they know how this stuff got in there?
So there's a couple theories. So Newton's Nike site, so the same as Needham's, they had one right over the where that little farm is on Winchester Street. They had one there, and they think what might have happened is transportation in between the two. Also what can happen is paperwork and records weren't exactly great back then. So when the site closed down, they may have just kind of into the river. But I guess when they originally called the Army and Navy about this, that they had already swept this area years ago, and determined they have some classifications, and they determined that this site was already kind of a non-issue. So it could have just been a couple one-offs. There was a history of up on Chestnut Street. I guess they actually have a confirmed accident that occurred, and ordinance went into the river, and so they cleared that out. So they were thinking maybe it was something along those lines, but that's why the ordinance is in this area.
So John, a couple things to learn from it. Using the MEMA, it only gives the people who are in the area. So if you're the town manager and you're in Austin, you found out on Facebook.
Yep,
So that was sort of like, okay, we didn't use Rave, I would have got that.
Yep.
So, just for our reminders, like, how do we notify people?
sure.
The second piece is, the reason that a couple people are supposed to approve the messages is to approve the message. So because we didn't use Rave, I'm not sure that means there shouldn't be some approval of the message, right? Unless it's the state police's message and then they do what they do. So
Sure.
was it them who wrote it or?
Yeah, it was MEMA wrote the message through their, what met their protocols, is my understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There are, there's character limitations for those media messages. At a minimum, a message that can only contain up to 90 characters has to go out. And the reason for that is there's still some older cell phone technology out there that can only accept messages up to 90 characters. So you have to send a message out of at least 90 characters or only 90 characters, which is really, really hard to try to say anything. They started using those tiny URLs in that messaging to try to get people to another website where they can actually read the whole message. But then in addition to that 90 character message, you can also then send a 360 character message, which is what most of our cell phones now can accept.
Okay.
And there are some pretty specific things that need to go in there that takes up space, you know, it needs to say per Needham PD or per, you know, whatever city or town, because you want to make sure that the reader of the message knows this is technically coming from this town. Because we never want to say it's coming from me, but not because we don't want to have a part in it, but because we're not the ones, like, it's not our event. So if people are calling us asking questions, we're not gonna have all the answers like you guys would, so that's.
Where
why-
did the tiny URL go?
I'm not sure, it must have gone, I'm assuming to Needham's website, because
It-
the tiny URL, like, Neiman doesn't create the website or what the messaging is, but we can just link to that, if that's something that we're told exists, we can link to that.
I know the third, when we had state police come and do the sweeping, they had, their PIO on site. And they were directing everybody to their mediums.
Is there sort of considerations taken as far as how quickly to send it out to not allow too much time? So if you said it's happening in the vicinity of 135 Pine Street, you don't want to send it out too far in advance to get people to show up and say like, oh, this would be a cool thing to watch. So
Yeah.
what kind of considerations are given to the amount of time to send it out so that people have enough notification to have advance, knowledge that it's gonna happen, but not to sort of attract people who are gonna wanna watch it?
Yeah, I think it's communication between like agencies. So what happened is the second one, state police were ready to roll and we went up there and. Then all of a sudden there was this like time delay. They were waiting for one of their supervisors to get there. So it was, all right, hurry up. And then they're like, oh, well, Sergeant so-and-so isn't here, so it ended up. Delayed from what we thought was gonna end up happening, because they set it up and we're ready, and then. We had to wait for the second guy, so yeah, it's communication between the two. I think sometimes we work together a lot, but we don't really see what each other's different issues are. So I think a learning thing from that is, okay, when are you actually gonna set this thing off? And what, then we can push that out. Yeah.
There was some commentary from some residents saying, I didn't get the message until after it went out.
Sure,
And, there was frustration on that part, but, if they got it within a couple of minutes, it still explained what happened.
Right.
I mean, ideally, they would have gotten it before, but I can understand how it's tricky to disseminate a
Yeah.
message to thousands of people in a very short amount of time.
no, I agree.
The WIA system can be a little, I don't want to say it's funky sometimes, but when it's sent up from the dispatch center, it technically goes through like a federal system called IPAWS, where you have to make sure that all of the right buttons are selected, because if not, they're just gonna say, no, we're not sending the message. And then when that happens, it goes technically to the hands of the cell carriers. So that's why sometimes when messaging does go out, you might be like, oh, all these Verizon people are getting it, why aren't the AT&T people getting it? And it becomes sort of on the responsibility of the cell carriers, how it goes out from there. And then it's all cell tower based, which is why sometimes you can get somebody 3 towns over from where you intended the message to go to start going off, which again is the reason why we have to say per Needham PD, so that somebody 3 towns over isn't thinking this is happening next door to them. They know, oh, this is from 3 towns over, that's weird, but at least they can identify it's not for their town.
And I can attest, a lot of it depends on the phone signal too. Working in the schools, once you're inside the building, I mean, your phone signals are fine. I had students who, for 15 minutes throughout the period, were walking out the front door, their phone pinged, if they finally got it. I'd gotten it 20 minutes before that.
I'm curious if we did get calls to dispatch, if people did call 911, or if just people were annoyed and got on Facebook. I made a distinction between those two.
Yeah, no, I think the dispatchers told me we got about 25 calls, either business line or 911. So not too many. It's interesting because different things will, like we'll have a helicopter fly like over town and we get a lot of calls, like what's going on. So I think it's just, it's
But that's a helpful proxy, right? Like if people are gonna call from a helicopter and then 25 maybe.
yeah,
It
it wasn't overwhelming, so it was good. And we actually did put a third person in. We typically have two in there. We put a third person in just in case that the phones were off the hook, so, but yeah.
Question I get to ask is, what's up with station?
It was empty. Yeah. If it were, so it was interesting because they wanted to recover it, but it was actually gonna take a a crane tow truck. It was a giant safe. And once they were actually able to open it, because if they weren't, we were gonna have to pull it up because there was evidentiary issues. But it was determined to leave it there because of there was gonna be a lot of moving parts to get that thing out, so. Yeah. That 100,000, it isn't, but that just happened in Las Vegas or something. There were two magnet fishers that pulled it out. Well, I don't know.
Did they have any idea where the safety was?
No. Yeah, it's interesting what's been recovered with the low water level, especially on the Highland Ave project. We've actually pulled out a few handguns, which we've taken for analysis, and I think it's just people throwing unused trash. They haven't been linked to crimes or anything like that, but it's interesting what's down there. So, yeah. Stacy?
Is there any concerns or decisions to be made about like other bodies of water in and around Needham? Or was it just focused on the girls?
Like the one that you.
Like the one I'm sitting on.
For ordinance or, no,
Yeah, asking for a friend.
fortunately, Rosemary gets, that gets drained.
The
Rosemary gets
homicidal-
drained a lot, or used to, so I think it's pretty clear, right?
I wouldn't see
The last time we cleaned it.
Yeah. No, I shouldn't think so, but I guess you never know.
Just wondering.
Just take a magnet, go fishing.
Just saying, is there a state down there?
Never know.
I'm not going down there. Yeah.
Any other questions? Anything online? No? Okay, thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, John.
All right, well, thank you. That was super helpful. I know that there were some questions and concerns about that, so we just wanted to bring them in and discuss it of the protocols and why they went with the MEMA alert system over Rave, so thank you for that. Just a few updates of what is going on. Like Heather mentioned, so Hurricane Preparedness Week is coming up July 7th through the 13th, so I'm working with Amy on doing some messaging for that to get out to the public. We'll get it on the website. Social media, just for people to be aware of how to prepare if we do have any storms that come up this way. Also being brought in on 4th of July to assist with that, we'll do a walkthrough on the 2nd to see that preparation set up and help with that if possible. And then the other thing that we're looking at is just the structure of the LEPC. So for those that have done the feedback forms, thank you. We're going to take a look at those, review the meetings, the structure of it, and to see what makes the most sense going into the fall and going forward. And then we also have our EOC tabletop exercise coming up June 25th. So we'll do our full EOC exercise here the morning of the 25th, and then we're doing our policy group in the afternoon to go over some more detailed information. So June seems to be very busy, and hopefully we'll quiet down for a little bit and then we'll kick it back up in the fall. Does anyone have any questions or? Okay.
I do quickly. It's just me, Tiffany. Is there anything that anybody needs to bring for the EOC meeting on the 25th? Like, do we need laptops or anything, or?
Thank you. Yes, I'll be sending out an email with all the information that you will need. There'll be some homework to do prior to and some more information for everyone.
Perfect, thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right, if that is it, thank you, everyone, and I'll be seeing a lot of you, but if I don't have a great summer, we'll be in touch with the phone.
Thanks for.
Thank you.